Hello, precious. I've been waiting for you. Come, get comfortable. Feel your head sink a little deeper onto that pillow tonight. Now, I know it's been a very long week for you. I don't know what's been trying you so hard, but even I can tell. You know that this is my favorite time of the week, right? Like everything slows down and the world softens around us. That everything, for a little bit, can be calm. I hope tonight will be gentle with you, precious. And if it isn't, you made it through. And remember that I am always here when you need to get rest. Every night when you need these little quiet moments. Now, close your eyes if you'd like. Breathe a little slower. Let the day and the week drift away. Tonight's story is continuing on with King Solomon's Mines by H. Rider Haggard. I will read it to you, and just let yourself drift off, and I'll be here when you wake up. I promise. Now, where were we? Well, here we are. Presently, from the depths of the bush behind us, came a loud woof, woof. That's a lion, said I, and we all started up to listen. Hardly had we done so, when from the pool about 100 yards off, we heard the strident trumpeting of an elephant. Unkungalako, undalavo, elephant, elephant, whispered the Kafirs, and after a few minutes afterwards we saw a succession of vast, shadowy forms moving slowly from the direction of the water towards the bush. Up jumped Good, burning for slaughter, and thinking, perhaps, that it was easy to kill an elephant, as he had found it to shoot a giraffe, but I caught him by the arm and pulled him down. It's no good, I whispered. Let them go. It seems that we are in a paradise of game. I vote we stop here for a day or two and have a go at them, said Sir Henry presently. I was rather surprised, for hitherto Sir Henry had always been pushing forward as fast as possible, more especially since we ascertained at Inyati that about 2 years ago an Englishman of the same name of Neville had sold his wagon there, and had gone up country. But I suppose his hunter instincts got the better of him for a while. Good jumped at the idea, for he was longing to have a shot at those elephants. And so, to speak the truth, did I, for it went against my conscience to let such a herd as that escape without a pull at them. All right, me hearties, said I. I think we want a little recreation. And now, let's turn in, for we ought to be driven off by dawn, and then perhaps we may catch them feeding before they move on. The others agreed, and we proceeded to make our preparations. Good took off his clothes, shook them, put his eyeglass and false teeth into his trousers pocket, folding each article neatly, placing it out of the dew under a corner of his mackintosh sheet. Sir Henry and I contented ourselves with rougher arrangements, and soon were curled up in our blankets, and dropping off into the dreamless sleep that rewards the traveller. Going, going, go. What was that? Suddenly, from the direction of the water, came the sounds of violent scuffling, and the next instant broke upon our ears a succession of the most awful roars. There was no mistaking their origin. Only a lion could make such a noise as that. We all jumped up and looked towards the water, in the direction of which we saw the confused mass, yellow and black in color, staggering and struggling towards us. We seized our rifles, and slipped into our vestons, that is, shoes made of untanned hide, ran out of the sherm. By this time the mass had fallen, and was rolling over and over on the ground, and when we reached the spot it struggled no longer, but lay quite still. Now we all saw what it was. On the grass there lay a sable antelope bull, the most beautiful of all the African antelopes, quite dead, and transfixed its great curved horns was a magnificent black-maned lion, also dead. Evidently what had happened was this. The sable antelope had come down to drink by the pool, where the lion, no doubt with the same intentions which he had heard, was lying in wait. While the antelope drank, the lion had sprung upon him, only to be received by the sharp curved horns, and be transfixed. Once before I had saw a similar thing happen. Then the lion, unable to free himself, had torn and bitten at the back of the neck of the bull, which, maddened with fear and pain, had rushed on until it had dropped dead. As soon as we had examined the beasts sufficiently, we called the Kaffirs, and between us managed to drag their carcasses up to the sherm. After that we went in and lay down, to wake no more until dawn. With the first light we were up and making ready for the fray. We took with us 3 8-bore rifles, a good supply of ammunition, and our large water bottles filled with weak cold tea, which I have always found to be the best stuff to shoot on. After swallowing a little breakfast, we started, Umbopa, Kiva, and Ventvogel accompanying us. The other Kaffirs had left with instructions to skin the lion and sable antelope, to cut up the latter. We had no difficulty in finding the broad elephant trail, which Ventvogel, after examining, pronounced to have been made between 20 and 30 elephants, most of them full-grown bulls. But the herd had moved on some way during the night, and it was 9 o'clock, and already very hot. By the broken trees, bruised leaves, and bark, and smoking drippings, we knew that we could not be far from them. Presently we caught sight of the herd, which numbered, as Ventvogel had said, between 20 and 30, standing in a hollow, having had finished their morning meal, and flapping about their great ears. It was a splendid sight, for they were only about 200 yards from us. Taking a handful of dry grass, I threw it into the air to see which way the wind was, for if once they winded us, I knew they would be off before we could get a shot. Finding that, if anything, it blew from the elephants to us. We then crept sneakily and stealthily, and thanks to a cover, managed to get within 40 yards or so of the great brutes. Just in front of us, and broadside on, stood 3 splendid bulls, one of them with enormous tusks. I whispered to the others that I would take up the middle, Sir Henry covering the elephant to the left, and Good, the bull with the great tusks. "Now," I whispered. Boom! 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 Went the heavy rifles, and down came Sir Henry's elephant, dead as a hammer, shot right through the heart. Mine fell on its knees, and I thought that he was going to die, but in another moment he was up and off, tearing straight past me. As he went, I gave him the second barrel in the ribs, and this brought him down in good earnest. Hastily slipping in the 2 fresh cartridges, I ran up to him, and a ball through the brain put an end to the poor brute's struggles. Then I turned to see how good had fared with the big bull, which I had heard screaming with rage and pain, as I gave mine its quiet acceptance to the afterlife. On reaching the captain, I found him in a great state of excitement. It appeared that upon receiving the bullet, the bull had turned and come straight for his assailant, which had barely had time to get out of his way, and then charged blindly past him, in the direction of our encampment. Meanwhile, the herd had crashed off in wild alarm, in the other direction. For a while I debated whether we should go after the wounded bull, or to try and follow the herd, and finally deciding against the latter alternative, thinking that he had seen the last of those big tusks I have often wished that we had had. It was easy work to follow the bull elephant, for they had left a trail like a carriage road behind them, crushing down the thick brush in their furious flight, as though it had been Tambarnikic grass. But to come up with them was another matter, and we had struggled on under the boiling sun for over 2 hours before them, with the exception of one bull. They were standing together, and I could see from their unique way, and the manner of which they kept lifting their trunks to test the air, that they were on the lookout for mischief. The solitary bull stood 50 yards or so from this side of the herd, over which he was evidently keeping sentry, about 60 yards from us. Thinking that he would see or get wind of us, that it would probably start them off again if we tried to get near, especially as the ground was rather open, we all aimed at this bull, and at my whispered word, we fired. The 3 shots took great effect, and down he went. Again, the herd started, but unfortunately for them, about 100 yards further on was a nullah, or a dried-out water track with steep banks, a place very much resembling the one where the Prince Imperial was killed by Zululand. Into this elephants plunged, and when we reached the edge we had found them struggling in the wild confusion to get up the other side of the bank, filling the air with their screams and trumpeting as they pushed one another in their selfish panic, just like so many as human beings. Now was our opportunity, and, firing away as quickly as we could load, we killed 5 of the poor beasts, and no doubt should have bagged the whole herd had they not suddenly given up their attempt to climb the bank and rushed headlong into the nullah. We were too tired to follow them, and perhaps a little sick of slaughter, 8 elephants being a pretty good bag for one day. So, after we rested a little, and the Kaffirs had cut out the hearts of 2 of the dead elephants for supper, we started homewards, very well pleased with our day's work, having made up our minds to send the bearers on the morrow to chop away the tusks. Shortly after we repassed the spot where Good had wounded the patriarchal elephant, we had come across the herd of the eland, but did not shoot at them, as we had plenty of meat. They trotted past us, and then stopped behind a little patch of bush about 100 yards away, wheeling round to look at us. As Good was anxious to get a near view of them, having never seen an eland close, he handed his rifle to Umbopa and said, following Kiva, strolled to the last patch of bush. We sat down and waited for him, not sorry for the excuse for a little rest. And you too needed rest, precious. You look relaxed now. Your breathing gentle, your eyes closed. You look beautiful, lying there. I know Morpheus waits for you. Say hello to him for me, okay? Now, rest easy. Stay safe amongst the stars, and know that I am always here, precious.